Welcome to the SwimSwam Breakdown. I'm Coleman Hodges coming to you from Asheville, North Carolina, where I am taking refuge after this NCAA March Madness. We are joined by SwimSwam Editor-in-Chief Braden Keith from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and coming to us live from his mom's house in Cary, Illinois, we got Michael Hammond back on the breakdown. What's up, guys?
It's like we were all just in the same place 24 hours ago. And now we're in different places, but we're still in the same place.
Yeah, this is very familiar faces for the last week. So let's get rolling.
The craziest part is that we were all in Atlanta, and now we're all just across the globe. Let's get rolling. Sorry. Cal won the 2022 men's NCAA championships to not the surprise of SwimSwam. Braden, enlighten us why we saw this coming.
Well, basically, when you add in Texas's diving, which is not what it's been in the past, we were in a dead heat coming into this meet. And for the last 4 or 5 years, Cal has outdropped Texas at NCAAs. So Texas would have had to have done something different. They would have had to have broken the trend to win this title, and they didn't. The gap was almost exactly the average historical difference between seed drops for the two teams. So in other words, the numbers didn't lie. The numbers were right. The numbers happened exactly how they should have happened.
Yeah, and there's obviously a couple of variables in there that the numbers don't totally tell, with the Auchinachi DQ and the Alvin Zhang surprise scratch to then not use him on the 400 medley relay. It clearly wasn't going to be enough to put Texas back over the top, but it's probably a 15-point closer meet than the numbers actually say now. But I mean, at the end of the day, these teams are actually constructed fairly similarly, have a sprinter or two but then have ranges of guys that can do well on relays. They're really good at the IMs and the strokes. And at the end of the day, Cal was just better at what they do best, especially on the last day, having tons of A finals in the 200s a stroke. There just was no way that Texas could catch up with them at the end.
I think your point about these teams being constructed similarly is a great one, because this is sort of how Cal is often built. They have had superstars in the past. You think Tom Shields, for example, a couple other guys, but this sort of Cal team where they're super deep, get lots of kind of top 3 finishes. Hugo obviously had a really, really good 400 IM, but he was a 1 event winner. When Cal's good, Cal doesn't usually do it with a 2 to 3 event winner. And when Texas wins, they often have that guy. And this year, Texas didn't have that guy. They had Drew Kibler won the 200 free. Then they won a couple relays, but that was it. They, for individual winners. And that's not how Texas wins NCAA titles. I think maybe that's why we miss the fact that Cal has generally a better taper, is because Texas often has a Joe Schooling or a Jack Conger or a guy sitting at the top that's just so overwhelmingly good that we don't
or 5
maybe notice or 5, that we don't necessarily notice what's going on down roster as much.
It always amazes me that the numbers don't lie, right? And this year, this was the perfect example of, all the fans were like, oh, Cal, Texas, it's gonna be super close meet. But if we look at the trends, it could have been predicted that it looks like Cal, if they do what they did historically, and if Texas what they do historically, Cal should win handily, which they did.
I almost feel like sometimes we ruin the fun, because a normal person going into day 4 would have thought it was going to be a close meet, and then it wound up not being, which again, the numbers made that pretty clear going into day 4 that it was over.
I'm a normal person. I was like, meet's not over. It could come. They have to, if Texas good mile diving, what? And you were like, dude, the meet's done. And it was. Moving on from NCAAs, we actually had a lot of really big news come out yesterday, starting with the 2024 Olympic swimming trials are set to go back to Indianapolis. But allegedly, but not at IUPUI as we've seen them in the past. They're going to Lucas Oil. They're going straight to the top, to the big boy stadium. What do we think?
This feels like such non-news to me because I think it was so painfully obvious that if they were leaving Omaha, they were going to Indy. There's a certain generation of swimming people, and it's a generation that has a lot of power in swimming right now, for which Indianapolis is like the swimming city because of IU being there and because of all the trials meets they've held in the past. You know, the wrinkle here is that Dale Newberger, who is the FINA vice president and the head of United States Aquatic Sports and all these other roles within swimming, his son runs Lucas Oil Stadium, is the stadium director. So like, and Dale has been pushing Indianapolis on his social media channels, and like, he can pretend like he doesn't have an influence over it all he wants, but we know he does. And so to me, it's just like, yeah, it was always going to be an Indy. We're going to hang out at the Weber Grill all week, ride scooters. Like I'm kind of bored with Indy. Not that Omaha was the most riveting place on earth, but at least in Omaha, I felt like there was a concentration of swim people like around the stadium. Around Lucas Oil is not great. Like there's not a lot going on there. So I think people are going to be a little more spread out into different parts of the city. But there's probably more housing, more hotels, no College World Series. So it's okay. Like it doesn't excite me, even being in a football stadium. I just don't get that excited about it, but like, it's fine, whatever, it's Indy.
Yeah. And to me, the question is, what is the environment going to be like inside the stadium for the racing? Like they're able to sell out the arena in Omaha without too terribly large of a challenge. And so they can create this fantastic environment for the racing. But now if you're, the pool is likely going to be oriented across the field, not lengthwise. So they'll put it like in an end zone kind of, where they won't try to look at the capacity of the stadium of 75 or 80,000, probably reduce it to, I don't know, 30 or 35, right? Are they going to be able to sell out and create that same environment, or is it going to feel kind of dead inside? Even if there's maybe 6,000 or 7,000 more people, you're now in a stadium that is multiple times larger than where you've ever been before. I mean, Indianapolis is known as, the Indiana LSC is one of the larger LSCs. Indianapolis specifically has a ton of club swimmers. It's obviously closer to large population centers that are also have strong swimming communities like Louisville, Cincinnati, Chicago, especially, much closer than anywhere in Omaha. So maybe they can get a little bit more of a draw there, but are we going to be able to see 40,000 people at the finals of Olympic trials? I'm a little skeptical that they're going to be able to sell double the amount of tickets that they did in Omaha.
Part of me wonders if they've decided this is the year to test for 2028, because as I repeat over and over again on this podcast, and as everybody's probably tired of hearing me say, the 2028 trials are going to be the whole 2028 Olympic circus is going to be insane, with it being in LA. And so maybe in 2028, they can put 40,000, 45,000 butts in the seats for an Olympic trials meet. So maybe this is a tryout to see what they can do, how they can do it, how this temporary grandstand in an end zone works. So maybe for that reason, it's a good value. But yeah, I mean, even if you cut the stadium in half, for anybody who's not been in an NFL stadium, they're like 6 levels high. Versus Omaha is 2 levels high. Yeah. So they'll probably curtain off some of the top levels, like they'll do different things, but that is going to be a really high ceiling, which another wrinkle is that's going to make it real interesting for the backstrokers. We already hear them talk about these big arenas that they're moving into now, but it's almost going to be like swimming outdoors.
Yeah. And I think that's a great point that, the environment will be completely foreign to anybody who's ever swum in a meet before. Like there's never been, to my knowledge, anywhere in the world that's been swum in a facility that large. And interestingly, will probably also provide a different environment than will actually be seen at the Olympic Games, right? Like USA Swimming in the past has held outdoor trials in 2004 to prepare for the 2004 outdoor pool in Athens. And then having kind of the larger stadium or middle-sized stadium in Omaha kind of mimics a little bit the size of some of these Olympic stadiums that have had in recent years. But it's interesting that it's probably not going to be the best prep for actually what will happen at the games. and being able to manage that and qualify for the team will be interesting perspective for the athletes.
We reported that the largest swim event ever attended was 45,000. Do you think that will get hit here or be broken in the stadium?
In one session? What was that?
It was like 1932 Olympic Games in Munich,
okay.
I think.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think the capacity is going to be that big. Like I don't think USA Swimming, they've got a couple of years probably. They probably got a year to make a final decision on capacity, but like I think they're going to go for 30 or 35 and be happy with that. I don't think they're going to try to push for 45. And maybe the answer is tickets go on sale pretty far ahead. Maybe the answer is if it starts to get that big, they just open up another level and they don't have to expand outward. So maybe that's part of why this is attractive to them, the sort of modularity of it.
Yeah, I also think like 45 is pushing it. That's probably half the capacity or slightly more than half the capacity of the actual stadium itself. Like if you're going to orient the pool in the end zone, you're by definition probably blocking out 2/3 of the stadium, unless you're going to build a pretty sizable temporary grandstand kind of on the field on the other side of the pool. Hitting 45 is just going to be a logistic, which they might.
Yeah.
That to me is probably a logistical challenge and just kind of how it's going to be oriented in the stadium.
Well, and we're seeing lots of basketball games in football stadiums right now, or that's a very popular thing for the Final Four. I don't know what they're doing in New Orleans this year, but people generally don't love it. I have not been to one, but people I know who have say they feel really far from the court and really disconnected, that it's fun because of the vibe, but like it's not a great spectator experience.
So I have been to one at Lucas Oil Stadium.
Oh.
So as an expert on the topic, I very much felt like I was far away from the court and there were a lot of empty space upstairs, like up real high. That kind of, there was a great vibe because it was, Duke and Louisville or whoever was playing. But there also were moments where it's like, wow, there's a lot of space in here that the energy just has a hard time fulfilling that much airspace.
Because modern stadium design tries to go real vertical, get you right over, even the spectators up high tries to get them right over the court. And when the court or the pool, in this case, isn't the right size for the stadium, it doesn't really work.
Braden, you brought up a point that I would like to circle back to, is that no College World Series of baseball, which means that we won't have a mixture of high class and low class mullets, which personally makes me sad. But I'm sure Indianapolis can provide some stylish hairdos to mix into our swimming boring.
With Coleman being what we call a bifollicular, where he can go either high class or low class with his mullet, depending on the appropriate attire.
Exactly. So trials in Indy 2024. I'm sure we'll talk about that much more. That's all the news-y stuff we're going to do. The rest of our topics today, we are going to do via sink or swim. First up today on Sink or Swim, coming right up on the heels of the NCAA Championships, is the Pro Swim Series in San Antonio. It is the last Pro Swim before the 2022 World Championship trials in everyone's favorite place, Greensboro, North Carolina, at the end of April. Sorry, we're not to April yet. My first question about San Antonio is Caeleb Dressel going to go a 47 in the 100-meter free? Sink or swim?
At least we're not taking trials to Greensboro, right? I'm going to swim it. It feels like, in my head, when I first saw this question, I said, sink. No, it's too soon. But then, we have to get ready because no rest for the weary. Here we go, right into World Championship trials. So I think he's going to be teetering right around the 48.0 mark, and I think he'll kind of dip just under. So I'm going to swim a 47 for Dressel.
I'm going to sink a 47. We've seen Dressel being the ultimate. When it's time to go fast, I'm going to go fast. And when it's time where it doesn't really matter or not if I go fast, like I'll be beat up in training and just wait until the end. Like especially, I know our next topic involves the pro swim as well. I don't like racing in outdoor pools, the conditions are super variable. So I'm going to sink Dressel going 47 and 100.
Am I the only one who thought he was going to say because he's going to 46?
Yes, you are. I think this is an indoor pool. Just for the
They're not swimming
Oh,
at
is
the big outdoor
it's
stadium.
it's not the 2015 Nationals pool. When they in 2020 and 2021 when they had pro swims there, it was at an indoor pool. It's like the Josh.
Oh, so it's not at Northside. That's
Yeah, it's the Josh Davis pool.
The renovated long course pool next to Josh Davis.
Yeah,
right, which is not actually Josh Davis.
Correct, which really confused
San Antonio pools are so complicated.
Yeah, so I am swimming it as well because I think it was 2019 where he went to a meet in California in June and won a 47.9 before, I guess that would have been before World Champs. And so I think he gets way down and then starts coming up. And so I think this close to trials, I think he'll have some sharpness. I say 47 for Dressel. We'll see.
Coleman.
Yeah.
I think it is the Northside Swim Center, which is the big outdoor pool. That's what it says online.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
are you going? You should figure that out.
I am going. So I'll figure that out within the next 48 hours. Okay. Next up, same meet, same pool, whichever pool that is. Is Katie Ledecky going to break a US Open record?
I'm looking at the US Open records in the most likely candidates. So it's 357.94 in the 400, 806.68 in the 800, and 1520.48 in the 1500.
Oh, and 154.4 in the 200 because she broke that at Michigan. The reason I asked this is because Katie Ledecky can literally go to any meet and have like one event that's just hits it out of the park.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and sink this just because I just think Nesty is going to have a different approach than what she's had in the past. I'm not saying I don't think she'll swim well. I'm not saying I don't think she'll be close because she's, as you said, she's liable to pop off at any time. I just, we saw what Florida did at SECs, and I don't think they're going to do it. I almost think like the Florida mentality is it's bad if you do it. And so it's just not going to happen. They're going to will it to not happen.
Yeah, I'm going to sink it as well. As Coleman said, Katie is probably better than any elite swimmer in history, able to just go off seemingly whenever she wants and when she gets on a roll. And the last time she swam in San Antonio in the lead up to the Olympic Games, she swam unbelievably well. But I'm going to sink this as well. I had my eye on the 200 free, actually, is 154.4 is the one that would be most likely to go down here. Probably she's starting to fine tune some speed stuff going into World Champ trials, but I don't know if I see a 154 low or 153 high coming out of this meet for her.
This is hard. And I love being a contrarian, but I'll sink too. I think you guys are right. I think she'll be good. I don't think she'll be great. I think with Nesty, she'll refine that chaotic speed a little more.
Colby, do you decide your answers when you write the questions, or do you wait to listen to ours?
I wait to listen to yours.
We're the experts.
On most of them. Yeah, I'm so glad you guys were here to talk about trials because I would have had nothing to say. ISL cancels their 2022 season. I feel like we all saw this coming with the war in Ukraine and Konstantin being a Ukrainian and a lot of his money being in Ukraine and Russia. So my question is, he sent out a letter publicly. He sent out a letter to the athletes. Sink or swim, will ISL athletes be paid in 2022?
I hate this so much. Like, I am so over the ISL. I'm happy it's not happening because I didn't want to cover it, and nobody, like, people just don't follow.
You're a bad swim fan.
I'm trying to be a good husband and not dedicate my entire summer to covering a swim meet that nobody's watching. Like, who knows? Like, I don't know whether to sink or swim because we can't get a straight answer from ISL on anything for years. They swore that the geopolitical conflict wouldn't impact season 4. And then they tried to blame the whole cancellation on the geopolitical conflict. Like, it's just, I know they're trying to get other investors, so maybe that would allow them to pay. But again, they say maybe they have another investor, maybe they don't. Like, it doesn't mean anything. Like, nothing they say has meaning at this point because they're just so all over the map. They can't get their stuff straight. I don't know. I guess I'm swimming it. I think they'll figure out, it's not that much money. I don't think that's still owed. So I'm sure they'll figure out how to cobble it together via whatever they can. They are confident that this league is going to continue next year, and Constantine's businesses are a little bit of a black box, but I don't know how any billion-dollar business in Ukraine right now is going to come out of this being able to afford a $40 million a year professional swim season. So they're going to have to find another big money investor if this is going to continue. And if that investor is out there, why didn't they find them already? So I think I'm swimming it, but like, I'm a pessimistic swim.
Float.
I feel like this question is asking me whether or not I believe the conflict will end by the end of the calendar year, because either they are legitimately not able to access their assets or they're using it as a cover to not have to do it. And my answer is, I don't know. I'm a swim coach and a swim writer. I'm not a CNN political analyst or global affairs analyst. I mean, I am in the same boat as Braden, is that I'm pretty pessimistic on the state of affairs over there now and the way things go. I think what popped into my mind with this question is, if the ISL is out for another 12 months, let's say, how does that impact the NCAA and potential kids coming back for the fifth year? Bobby Fink, Kieran Smith, and others that may have gone to the ISL route to maybe make another 40 or 50 grand, but now with the NIL rules, maybe we see some more people coming back. But that's a pretty large tangent off of this topic. So that's where my head went initially of, oh, if this isn't happening, does that impact some of the top NCAA swimmers who may return for a fifth year now?
Well, and the corollary to that point is that last year, and I know there was COVID, but last year teams had trouble filling out their rosters. They had trouble getting quality swimmers on their teams and at the meets. And there's a lot of swimmers from the back end of rosters, especially American swimmers who have good college degrees, weren't making that much anyway. But, it might be a lot more obvious to some of those swimmers now that they can go get a good job, start building their career, make 60 grand a year rather than scraping by on 30 grand a year with their parents chipping in for their rent. Like, the talent pool for the league, which needs a lot of swimmers to operate in the current format, is going to get thinner as a result of this. And so I think that's another sort of existential crisis for the ISL. They have to figure out, maybe if they can get Asia involved, it's not as much of an issue, but if they can't, then they're in trouble that way too.
On that note, a few notes from the press room at men's NCAAs. Fink said he's for sure not taking the fifth year. Kibler and Krieger were both on the fence, but they also said in their interviews, like, my last NCAAs. So it's kind of a question mark with them. But my guess, if I was going to bet on it, I would say no. Cam Atronauchi said he was a fifth year already, so he doesn't have any NCAA eligibility, but on his retirement, he said, I'm going to take a week to think about it, and then we'll see how I feel.
Well, and we have to remember that next year, those swimmers all count against their team's scholarship totals, which they didn't this year. So that's why we're not going to see as many fifth years come back.
Why is that? It's
just the way the waiver was structured. The first year, if you didn't transfer, your scholarship didn't count. So the absence of Jordan Windle, for example, who I assume was on a big scholarship, it's not like Texas was operating with fewer scholarships as a result of that. It would have been a bonus that they didn't have. Moving on from ISL, in a similar vein, Russian athletes were banned. Russian and Belarusian athletes were banned from 2022 World Championships in Budapest this year.
the question is, do you think that they should be allowed to swim in the World Championships? Do you think this is fair?
So a swim would be, I think they should be allowed, and a sink would be, I think they shouldn't be allowed.
Correct.
My initial reaction was a soft swim. It wasn't like I was militantly in favor of them competing, but I understood the decision to allow them to compete. My initial concern was really that short course World Championships in Russia, and the fact that it took them so long to move that, I think is still a travesty. Even though now that they've moved it, I think that's just so bad for swimming. And I hate that right now we're having to choose between ISL and FINA when neither clearly can get their stuff together. But after the Putin pro-war rally with the Olympians, I don't know what Putin's goal was of bringing out those Olympians, but if there was any doubt before that international athletes exist as propaganda for the states they represent, Putin went and erased any doubt about it. And so I think it's, if they allowed the Russians to come, the week they got back, they'd be at a pro-war event promoting Putin, promoting the war in Ukraine, all those things. So I think at this point, after the Rylov incident, it's got to be a sink. You got to keep them out. If they want to defect, if they want to come out publicly against the war, against Putin, whatever that language needs to be, I'm okay with it, with sort of reconsidering it on a case-by-case basis. But I think FINA had it backward. I think instead of considering bans on a case-by-case basis, they needed to put in a blanket ban and consider accepting athletes back in on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, I felt the same way. That my initial thought was, FINA using it as all right, well, we're just, because everybody else in the world is now, for lack of a better term, canceling Russia and Belarusian athletes, assets, whatever you want to call it. They just it felt initially like they were just following what everybody else in the world was doing in terms of kind of shunning them from everything. And then the whole Rylov thing coming out at the pro-war rally, as Braden mentioned, shows either the actual or perceived influence that they can have on their societies, and allowing them to compete and like Rylov being an Olympic medalist, succeed under that, and show kind of the power is a difficult thing to kind of give them a platform to do. If they were allowed to, the one thing that really bugs me is the not being allowed to compete under Russia, but they're the Russian Olympic Committee at the Olympic Games. Like, if you're going to let them in, have it be Russia. If you're not going to let them, if you're going to say Russia's banned, then ban them. Like, take a stance one way or another. Don't allow yourself to, the athletes can come as long as they're the Russian Olympic Committee or the Russian Swimming Federation. Like, just to me, that's a bunch of garbage.
Yeah, they're that. Yeah, they could have put them under an Olympic flag. The word Russia
right.
should not have been on their uniforms.
Yeah, I was really confused about that one all Olympics, and I think a lot of athletes were as well. I'm with Braden. I'm with Michael. I don't like them competing at all. I mean, because this is sports, and sports is not bigger than people losing their lives in a war being fought. So not going to support that. So I feel for the athletes, but as Braden said, if they want to defect completely, that would be one thing on a case-by-case basis. But I get that's hard culturally. I don't know what Russian culture is, and I don't know how that would affect them, but probably pretty negatively. But it's sports versus human lives, so going with human lives on that one. Last but not least, we announced that she announced Maggie MacNeil going to Cal for her 5th year, getting her master's, gonna compete for the Golden Bears. I am curious, do you think that she will go best times in short course yards as a Cal Golden Bear?
I think she'll go best freestyle times. I don't think she'll get back to her 100 fly time. So, it partially depends on who she has to train with. It seems to me as though she really wanted to be the center of attention. So and I don't say that in a negative way, just she wanted to make sure she was getting the full coaching attention wherever she went. And so I guess we don't know if Izzy Ivy's going to be back there. We don't know if Weitzel's going to be training there. But I think Terry McKeever is obviously a great coach. She's coached some of the greatest swimmers in the last 20 years, especially short course swimmers. So even though Maggie's already great in short course, I think there's still something she can learn from Terry. But that 100 fly time was so good. I think she'll get to best times in the freestyles, but not in the 100 fly.
Yeah, that's what I wrote down as well. I called it swimming with water wings. She's going to make the, here you go. Floaties somewhere on here. I don't know. Swimming with floaties.
A lot of writing. You can't.
Swimming with floaties. She's going to go best time in the 53. Like I would not be surprised if she goes 20 point something, challenges Douglas's record. As Braden said, I think the 100 fly was such an otherworldly swim, and in the lead ups into an Olympic year, especially kind of gives athletes like her juice. I think she goes the best time in the 50 free. I don't think she cracks the 100 fly.
Inside stuff. Michael was handwriting notes all week long in Atlanta. It's my favorite thing from NCAAs.
I'm old school, man.
That Ivy League education.
I'm gonna swim it on all accounts. Well, I'm on the 100 fly. I think she can go best time in the 100 fly. I think for whatever reason, I'm not going to speculate. It is obvious that on paper, Michigan had a down year. And I think she's going to go to Cal. She's going to get new perspective. She was 49 low this year with Michigan having that down year. So I think she can go 48.7. I don't see why not. She's Maggie MacNeil. And last but not least, I just got a fun question to close out the show for you guys. Which of the 4 cities that were up for the 2024 Olympic trials would you have liked to see most?
Minneapolis, 100%. Big time Minnesota guy. I've been to Duluth.
Once.
Let's go Minneapolis.
I would have said keep it in Omaha. They're now at the point where Omaha was.
I'm so over Omaha.
To have the identity.
St. Louis.
You're punching your ticket.
Have the meet in the arch.
Keep it somewhere. Keep it consistent. Don't move it around. Make it an identity around the meet in the city.
Coleman, I'll meet you at Fitz's. June 2024. We'll see you there.
We'll be in St. Louis. All right. That's the SwimSwam Breakdown. Tune in every week for your week's news in swimming.